الكريم سبحان الله رب العرش العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين أسألك مجيبة رحمتك وأزاي مغفرتك والغنيمة من كل بر والسلامة من كل إثم لا تدع لي ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا حاجة هي لك في رضا إلا قضيت يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اغفر لها وارحمها وأسكنها في الجنة
آمين.
وتجاوز عن سيئات واحشرهم مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها السلام وآخر دعوانهم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Shukran jazilan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place your mother in the highest place in Jannah and
Amin.
sabr in your heart and in the family's heart.
Amin.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to say that when we look at the question of why we are on this dunya, then it's not easy to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. But one of the things that Allah says clearly in the Quran is that Allah put us on this dunya in order for us to be tested, to test whether we will follow the path of the Quran and the Sunnah, or whether we will be distracted by the enemies of Islam. Now, when we talk about the enemies of Islam, then the nafs is clearly high up there as the one thing that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has warned us about, that our nafs, fighting the nafs, beautifying it, and taming the nafs is clearly one of the biggest challenges that we will have for as long as we are on this dunya. The second one is, of course, we know about it and we've been told about it, is Shaytaan. Now we've started discussing Shaytaan, who and what Shaytaan is. We'll go further about that. But we need to know how he operates, so that if we understand how Shaytaan operates, then we can know what to do and what are the conditions and the circumstances to look out for when we are talking about Shaytaan. Now we're going to start, inshallah, with part 2. And I am immediately going to go over to our slides. So the first one, where we were going to, now I don't know if we're familiar, some of us may not be familiar with who Ibn Arabi is, radiallahu an. Now, Ibn Arabi is a scholar of Tawheed and a very, very highly respected sheikh in the Tasawwuf tradition. He is referred to as Shaykhul Akbar, the great sheikh. Now these titles are given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is an extremely highly respected person. The knowledge that he had accumulated and what was given insight to was way, way, way above the time of the period that he lived in. He lived about 900 years or so ago. And he could speak about atoms and the creation of the universe and the creation of human beings and things. Now, I've taken some of the stuff that he has spoken about. Can I say that it's not the kind of person that I would advise you to read about unless you are doing it with some guidance. Now, he speaks about Shaytaan and Jinn, and I've only extracted some of the things that I thought would be easy enough for us to discuss here without going into too much detail. Now, the first thing that he said, we've heard that the Shaytaan or jinn are created from fire. He says it's smokeless fire. Fire that, if it was not smokeless fire, it means that wherever we would have seen jinn, you would have seen the smoke. But it's a smokeless type of fire. And it's made, they are made up of fire and air. In the same way that human beings are made up of two components as well. Although we say human beings are made from clay or dust or earth, but also water, he says. So water and dust, that was the creation of human beings, and jinn are created from air and smokeless fire. Now, what Ibn Arabi says is that the mixture of fire and air determines the kind of being that you get when you talk about the jinn. The air in it, the air component from which jinn are made, air transforms to whatever shape that contains it, generally not visible. Now, jinn is the same. Jinn can take on whatever form they want. Normally, they take on the form of animals. That's the general kind of understanding of the form that they normally take. They can also take the form of human beings, but they are for people who have seen them, they are regarded as very ugly, detestable beings. Now, the fire component, Ibn Arabi radiallahu anh says, makes them weak of intellect. They don't have the ability to reason and apply logic like human beings can. And generally, they are very proud and very arrogant, very boastful. That's the nature, the inherent nature, the inbuilt nature of jinn, how they were created. And the fact of their arrogance is demonstrated by what the Quran speaks about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Nabi Adam. He instructed the jinn to prostrate to Nabi Adam, including the Malaa'ikah, and he refused. Iblis. Now, let me just press pause for a moment there and say that Iblis is the head of the species called jinn. It's like we have Malaa'ikah. Malaa'ikah has is a special species. Then you get human beings, and you get plants. That's a different species, and you get animals, a different species. In the same way, jinn is a different species. When we say different species, it means that the way they behave is different to the way we behave. Their requirements and the laws that apply to us don't apply to them. Not in the same way anyway. But Iblis is the head. He is the head Shaytaan. And at the time when Nabi Adam alayhi salam was created, then Iblis was a believer. He was a very good, pious being. Now, we'll come to that later, the fact that they were also given choice. But at the time when Allah instructed the Malaa'ikah to prostrate, Iblis refused to do it because he claimed he was made of fire. And to him, fire was superior to dust or clay. And that's the time when he was banished from Jannah. He roamed around with the Malaa'ikah. He was amongst them, and he was respected as a person who worshipped Allah in a very, very elevated way. So like angels, jinn are also spiritual beings. They are not visible to the eye. Spiritual beings are generally not visible to the eye, because when we talk about spiritual beings, it's a being that exists outside of the material world. The laws of nature do not apply to the people of the spiritual realm, as well as our general laws of nature, of how it operates and it applies to us. Those laws do not apply in the same way to these beings. They have their own set of laws, but they are not visible to the eye, but can appear in the material world under certain circumstances, including Malaa'ikah. Malaa'ikah can also appear, but we'll speak about Malaa'ikah next week, inshallah. So they're both spiritual beings, and the laws of nature of our material world do not apply to them like it applies to us. Now, jinn, like human beings, also need to eat and drink, and they are also given the ability to procreate, which makes them different from Malaa'ikah. Malaa'ikah don't have nafs. They don't have that instinctive desire to want to eat and sleep and procreate like human beings. They're different. But jinn is very similar to humankind, that they also need food and drink, and they also need to procreate to continue their species. And they still do so now, even. The other similarity between them and human beings is they also have free will and choice. It's the only two species that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created with choice and free will. In fact, if the jinn did not have choice and free will, when Allah said to the Malaa'ikah and to the jinn, prostrate to Nabi Adam, at the time, they would have had no choice. Like the Malaa'ikah didn't have a choice. If Allah says that, they do it. Jinn, if Allah says do that, they have a choice to do or not to do. But then they're going to be judged in the year after, depending on how they exercise the choice. Very similar to us. So we said that Shaytaan belongs to the jinn family. It's a jinn species. Like we have the species of human beings. They are a species on their own. They, with their choice, can be Muslim or non-Muslim. This concept that the jinn are all bad is not 100% correct. Many of them are bad, but many human beings are bad. So they fall in that category of choice, and depending what choice they exercise, they can be Muslim or non-Muslim or total disbelievers or unbelievers. It depends how they exercise their choice that they have. And as I mentioned, we refer to Shaytaan, but Shaytaan is actually a collective name of the followers of Iblis. Iblis is the head of the jinn. Now, the moment you become a follower of Iblis, you form part of his disciples, and they are known as the Shaytaan. And they are the ones who then follow the guidance and the instructions of Iblis, and their sole purpose, they've got no other purpose. Once they become the followers of Iblis, their sole purpose is to draw you away from the path of Islam and to become unbelievers, to become evil, to do everything other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. So their purpose must be absolutely clear. Their sole purpose is to lead you astray, away from the path, the right path. Well, at this point I made also that they can generally appear in other forms, where they become visible, but the forms that they take on are not always the same. It can change from one form to another, and it's not only animals. They can change into other things as well. The difference between human beings and the jinn is also that they've been given this ability to do things way beyond what human beings can do in terms of strength. They've been given exceptional strength. They are extremely strong and powerful, and normally very big in stature. For people who have had experiences of the jinn and who have seen them, they describe them as enormous beings, very big in stature, but also extremely strong. And they can move extremely fast and cover distances in a flash. In a few fractions of a second, they can move from point A to point B, which is obviously not possible for us as human beings. The other point that's worthwhile mentioning is that they made of fire. So you put fire in fire, it's supposed to be, well, so what's the difference? We are made of fire. This is what we are made of. So if they go to Jahannam, the understanding would be that it's fire. Ibn Arabi, radiallahu an, tells us that it's not only extreme heat, it's also extreme cold that the Jahannam will have. And that is why it is such a big thing. If they're going to be doomed to Jahannam, then their suffering will be through severe, extreme, the ultimate cold that you can get. Now, we can't really fathom that because we are made of normal substances that we are familiar with. And for us, fire is extreme. You can't think that severe cold can be as extreme or even more extreme than fire, but they will be punished. The Shaytaan will be punished with extreme cold, but they can also be punished with fire. That's what Ibn Arabi tells us. Now, we know that their sole purpose is to lead us astray. One of the things that we must remember is that, and we will come to this when we talk about Malaa'ikah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assigns specific Malaa'ikah to every single person. To you as well? Yes, to you too. You have Malaa'ikah accompanying you all the time. They are supposed to be there to guide you and to inspire you to do the right things. But at the same time, Allah has assigned the Shaytaan also to accompany you wherever you are. So you are always accompanied by good and bad, wherever you find yourself. They accompany you to do what they want you to do. So if it's the Malaa'ikah, they want you to do good. If it's the Shaytaan, they want you to do bad. And you will constantly be bombarded with the whisperings and the inspiration or the suggestions that come from both. And it's important to realize that no one is free from the Shaytaan. The Shaytaan, for example, that was assigned to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was converted to become a Muslim. He became Muslim, and as a result, the normal influence of Shaytaan coming via the jinn was blocked there as a means of protection for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he didn't have that problem that we all have, that we are all accompanied by Shaytaan as well as the Malaa'ikah, no matter where we are. Now he says, it's important to know what the Quran says in chapter 7, verse 17. I open quote, Iblis said, "Because you have sent me astray, surely I will lie in wait against them on your straight path. Then I will come to them from before them and behind them, from their right and from their left, and you will find most of them as unthankful ones." Close quote. What this says is that having been doomed to Jahannam now and cast out of Jannah until eternity, the decision has been made already. He is going to go to Jahannam. And he then said, Iblis then said, he will attack human beings in whatever way he can, using every means, every method. He will use your senses. He will use your organs. He will use whatever gap. He will treat it as a door. If it's your eyes, he will use that as a door to get to your heart, to get control of your heart, and then to be able to influence your actions. Or your hands, or your feet, or your ears, or whatever. You will see that as a door through which he can go. And he will use all of those avenues to attack you. And he says that most of us will be ungrateful, will be unthankful. And how true that statement is. The majority of us are not grateful enough to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings that we get. When we say Alhamdulillah, we say it in a by the way as a rhyme. Alhamdulillah, I got my pay. Alhamdulillah, I got the house that I was longing for. But you say it in such a by. You don't say Alhamdulillah. You don't say it with that true meaning of gratefulness. Because if you just say it as a rhyme, is that being thankful? It's not thankful. Thankful must come with heart, not only an utterance. Now he's been given the ability, Shaytaan, once he's assigned to a person, then he knows that person's mentality, his strengths, and his weaknesses. And he will try and work out a strategy that will suit that particular person. So Shaytaan will get it right with a certain strategy with a particular person. He's not going to use the same strategy with another person. He will adapt the strategy to suit that person's personality, his intellect, his behavior, his upbringing, his education, you will modify it to suit that person, because the point is he wants to come through without you even knowing it's him. You want to influence your behavior. And how often do we have thoughts in our minds? Where do they come from? That's the first thing you must ask yourself. Where do these thoughts come from? Does it come from Shaytaan or does it come from the Malaa'ikah? And if there's a hint that it could be bad, then know that it's Shaytaan. If it's good, then know that it's the influence of the Malaa'ikah. Now, he will attack you when you least expect it. You will be so busy with whatever you're busy, and Shaytaan will suddenly appear out of the blue without you even knowing it's him. And you will have this thought or this urge to do something without knowing where it comes from. Look at your behavior and start recognizing Shaytaan when he is busy with you in your daily behavior. When you're doing the wrong things, of course, he's got no work to do. You're already doing the wrong things. But when you want to move from the wrong things to do the right things, then he's at his worst. You've never made salah before, or you just started making salah, and he will then try his utmost to convince you not to do it. Use whatever trick in the book he's got. Because when you were not making salah, then he had you. You were doing what he wanted you to do, not to worship Allah the way you are expected to. But now you want to do the right thing. Oh, he's very dangerous. But when you're busy doing the wrong things and you're not making salah and you eat during the fast and all of that, then he doesn't even worry with you. He knows he's got you. He doesn't have to do a lot. He just makes sure that you don't move away from that to start doing the right things. Now, when you see hatred, enmity, jealousy, envy, somebody who's troublesome, then see that as some of the behavior of Shaytaan bringing that about. Because a person who wants to do things that's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't be involved in those kinds of things. Now Allah tells us in the Quran, Shaytaan wants only to excite enmity and hatred between you. So when you see hatred and enmity and all these other bad things, then know that that was something that was introduced and influenced by Shaytaan. Recognize it and stay away from it if you can. When you want to do good, for example, you want to help people who's got financial problems, then his favorite one is, will you have enough for yourself? What about tomorrow if you lose your job? Have you got enough in the bank? To get you not to do what is pleasing to Allah, but to keep your money, even though you've got enough to help others. But the idea and the thought that is put in your mind, you're going to have a big problem if you give all that money away or some of the money away, because you might run short. And he's the one, if you do wrong things, he orders you to commit the evil, but can he force you? He cannot force you. We said that last week. Shaytaan does not have his own power. Shaytaan cannot force you to do anything. Power comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no other power in the entire created world. In all the worlds out there, there are many worlds, not only our material universe. There are many other worlds. All the power that keeps everything together from one second to the other comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The power of Shaytaan? Yes, his power too. He doesn't have his own power. Otherwise, we would have had a situation, Allah has power and Shaytaan has power, so there's two centers of power. But Allah has given him the ability to do a particular job because we are beings that's been created to be good or bad. And he is on the bad side, and Allah has made it facilitated for him to do his work, but he doesn't have his own inbuilt, inherent power. All power comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he can't force you to do anything. He can only whisper, tempt, persuade, use his kind of psychology on you to get you to do this because he loves that, and that's bad. Well, maybe sometimes it's not so obviously bad, but he knows what his plan is to divert you completely. First gets you to do the small wrong things, and then he gets you to do all the other bad things. Now, before I go on to what Imam Ghazali says about how Shaytaan at the practical level operates, what is the kind of method he uses, a very simple method to illustrate it. I want to pause there and to hear if there are any questions or comments before I move on.
Salie, I'm just thinking about, obviously, we've spoken about the role of Shaytaan and his ability or lack of ability to force people, but rather to suggest. So would it say that within the human being there exists a weakness or an inclination to either want to do good or bad that Shaytaan can play on, because ultimately what he's doing is he's only suggesting. I mean, on Dev Qiyam also, I would say he called to people, but they did not necessarily, and basically they came willingly in a sense. Okay. So it exists there within the human being an inclination to both good and bad, because I can't remember exactly. I don't know if this is from Hadith, but it was said that when Nabi Adam was created and his form was created, in other words, before the Ruh was blown in and he was very hollow at the time, Shaytaan approached him and looked at him from all angles and kind of, I think, looked in his ears and every other aspect of him and kind of and studied him. So to this degree, would that not say also that Shaytaan knows the nature of man? And so that's why that's the catalyst. That's why he's so easy to, man is so easy to be manipulated sometimes, because he knows the base nature of man.
Yeah, Shaytaan has been given knowledge of every single person in detail. He's not only whispering to your ears, he whispers to your mind, he whispers to your heart, he whispers to your eyes. Via that, how he does it, Allah knows best. But we all have that. Allah created us not as Malaa'ikah. A Malaa'ikah is incapable of doing wrong. We know that. They can only be good. They've been created to only do good, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way that they can worship Allah as Malaa'ikah. Human beings, on the other hand, have been created with a nature that is angelic. We can do good, and we have the capacity and the ability to become even better than Malaa'ikah. But then we have the other side within ourselves, in our DNA. We have this nature of also wanting to do bad. Both exist within one human being. And it is how these forces of good and bad play itself out. Firstly, we make our choices of which way we're going to go. But the choices doesn't just arise from you thinking or whatever. It's also assisted by the influences of either the Malaa'ikah on the one side or the Shaytaan. Now he knows what you are made up of, what your weaknesses are. Every single person's weakness is known by Shaytaan. Even his strengths. He's been given that ability to know that, because how's he going to test you if he doesn't know you? Because he can adapt his strategy to suit the individual. So yes, our innate, inherent nature is both good and bad. That's the constitution of a human being. The moment we're given choice. Obviously, when we talk about the ruh, we talk about something else. Is there any other question, perhaps, before we move on? Okay, let's move on. Now, Imam Ghazali goes into, and I'm not going to go to too much detail here, but he goes through essentially 7 steps of what Shaytaan, how he operates, how he modifies and changes his strategy with a person. The first thing he tries to do is outright stop you from doing anything good. Anything good, if he can stop you from doing something good, that is his main objective. That's Shaytaan's role. If you can't get it right to stop you from doing it, then his other strategy is he's going to get you to delay or postpone it. So delay or postpone, you should see when you are busy postponing something good or delaying it without a very, very good reason, then that is something that comes from Shaytaan. Recognize it. The other thing that he does, let's use an example, a practical example. You watching a soccer match, and it's the last half. It's about 20 minutes to go. It's Maghrib, and you know you can still complete it, get Maghrib in time. You sit and you watch the match, and Shaytaan is busy saying, yes, you can still make Maghrib in time, man. Watch the match finish. Your mind is going to be full of it when you go make Salah. Watch it till the end and then go make Maghrib. He's hoping that it might not be a soccer match. It might be you busy with some other task, schoolwork or work, or anything. You're busy with this task. You know you have to go make Maghrib, but he whispers, first complete this task, then you can put your mind fully onto making Salah or whatever other good deed you want to do. He's hoping that once you got you to put it off and first complete what you're doing, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is now you've already delayed it, that he will get you to not do it at all after you've completed watching the match or whatever the thing is that kept you from doing it. So if he fails in that, then he launches his 4th attack. And ostentation, showing off, doing things to impress people. He works on that part of your nature. We all have that in us. Human beings are created The entire universe is created based on opposites: good, bad, light, dark, sin, ibadah, white, black, light, darkness, you name it. So he's going to try and get you to show off. I don't know what made me now speak about the opposites. Anyway, I forgot my point. He's trying to get you to do things to impress people that you are pious with how you're doing it, or even the way you dress to go to the masjid, whether it's a man or a woman. Put on special clothes. You want to show people what you got, who you are, so that they can think you are something special. He tries that. If he succeeds, he's got you. And on the outside, the way you're doing it, it might even appear to people as if, oh, this person is truly sincere and genuine in what they're doing. But Allah knows, Allah can see in the heart, and Shaytaan knows whether he got you or not. You can see, oh, no, I got him. He's busy doing things for show. But if he fails in that, he tries something else now. He says, okay, so you're not doing it for show. But then he works on, you are now busy making the salah, then he gets you to do it with vanity, with arrogance, boastfulness, without showing it to people. You're not showing it, but you become complacent and overconfident that you have reached that point where you can say you're doing your ibadah correctly. He says, look, everything that you're doing, you're doing it correctly, and you at least trying. And he wants you to think that you have arrived. And your response should be, according to Imam Ghazali radiallahu an, is your response when these thoughts come into your mind should be, I am Allah's weak slave. I am a sinner, and I am not entitled to anything. I am completely, utterly dependent on the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My deeds are so weak. It's so ineffective. It's far from what it ought to be. Then he comes to his sixth attack. He says, it's a very subtle point. He says to you, you're trying your best and you've done well so far. Now you know what? Allah's going to let people know what a pious, what a righteous, what a good person you are. Allah's going to let people recognize you as a righteous, pious person. Especially when you are doing things secretly, other people don't know about it and so on. Then he comes and he says, Allah's going to let people become aware of what are the good things that you are doing and how special you are. And your response, according to Imam Ghazali radiallahu anh, is that you should say to him, when he comes with those kinds of whisperings, is that I'm not doing it for reward or fame or recognition. I am doing it purely to please Allah. Then he comes to his final one. He says, why do you want to do good or stay away from the bad? Why? It doesn't matter one way or the other. Everything has been decreed. And this is a topic. The decree of Allah is not something that we must take lightly. We must, if you want to go to the YouTube channel and go look up and go through predestination, the decree of Allah, to understand it correctly. But I don't want to repeat all of that because it took us 9 sessions to cover predestination. But for our purposes now, everything has been decreed, he says. And it's meaningless whether you do good or bad, because if Allah's decree is that you must do bad, you're going to do bad. If Allah's decree is that you must do good, you will do good. So why still make effort? Your response, according to Imam Ghazali, is you must strive to always obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran and the Sunnah, and stick close to it. Whatever Allah has decreed, you will accept, whatever it is. But it's better to be one of the obedient slaves than to go and consciously do something that is bad. Now, if you go through the 7 different ways, for the first one, where he wants to prevent you from doing something, for some people it might work. He tries his tricks with this person, he gets to prevent the person, and the person stops. He doesn't do the good. For others, it will have to go through different stages. It gives you an idea of how sophisticated Shaytaan really is. And you must have a response for each of his different strategies that he's going to use, so that you don't fall in his trap without even realizing that you've actually fallen in one of his traps. Now, Sheikh Khazim, Hafidullah, may Allah be pleased with him, says in one of his books, Questions and Answers, Sheikh Khazim says, radiallahu an, Shaytaan places his mouth upon the heart of the son of Adam. When he remembers Allah, Shaytaan withdraws. And he forgets, if he forgets Allah, Shaytaan devours it. May Allah protect us. What this means is that if you are forgetful about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your heart is something that can be taken over and occupied by Shaytaan very easily, very easily. But if your heart is filled with the remembrance and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're conscious that every action that you do, you keep Allah in the forefront of your mind, and within your heart, you fill your heart with that consciousness, there's no place for Shaytaan. There's no place for him. He knows that. Then he withdraws. This is not a heart that I can win over. But the moment he sees the heart is filled with other things other than Allah, then he sees that as a ready target. And Sheikh Khazim Hafidullah says, when the heart is accustomed to the whisperings of Shaytaan, and the heart is not used to doing things that's pleasing to Allah, apart from making salah and fasting, it's you don't actually live your life along the lines of what is pleasing to Allah in between those things that you do that is correct. Now, a heart like that is referred to as a sick heart or a black heart. And that's the kind of heart that Shaytaan loves. A heart that can easily be taken over. Once you take over the heart, you take over the actions of the person, and you, in fact, control from the outside. Shaytaan can control what you do. You become like a puppet in the hands of Shaytaan because he's got control of the heart. And how nicely Sheikh Hazim Hafidullah puts this. If on the other hand, your heart is filled with the remembrance of Allah and your behavior expresses that, then you will be given the opportunity to drink from the nur and the barakah of Allah's rahmah. It will shine on your heart, and that inner goodness will pour out of you. It will radiate in the way you appear, and it will in fact express itself in your outer actions, and it will be seen by others without you even making any attempt, because that is something that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and other people will recognize it. And you don't do it for that purpose, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are conscious of Allah and you remember Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you one of these gifts. Now, the point that we made earlier, this is what Shaytaan will say on Judgment Day. All the people are assembled. Now we're going to have to account. How did we use our time? Why did we do this? And why did we do that? One of the things that we know, people are used to saying is that I couldn't help it, man. Shaytaan forced me to do this. I tried to, but I couldn't, man. Shaytaan had the overhand over me, the upper hand over me. He forced me to do it. You've heard that, I'm sure. This is what Shaytaan will say on that day for those people who blame Shaytaan. He's going to say, and this is in the Quran, chapter 14, verse 22. Indeed, Allah had promised you the promise of truth. Let me just cover it piece by piece and make my comment as we go through this. He is saying that the Quran and the Sunnah was the truth. What Allah promised you was the truth. I also promised you things, he will say. I promised you, but I betrayed you. He will then say, I betrayed you. Whatever I promised you, whatever, I betrayed you, but I had no authority over you. He's making it clear. He couldn't force you to do whatever you're claiming he forced you to do, except that I invited you and you responded to me. I couldn't force you to do it. I only persuaded you, suggested to you, convinced you, and you accepted that. So do not blame me, you will say, but blame yourselves. Shaytaan says this. I cannot be called upon to your aid, nor can you be called to my aid. That speaks for itself. Indeed, I deny your association of me with Allah before. What he means is that instead of truly believing only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in no one else, you put your faith and your trust in Shaytaan. And that what you did there was wrong. You can't go and put people next to Allah as partners. Shaytaan is saying that. Shaytaan is telling you, you put me up on that pedestal, that was wrong. Allah is the only true Lord of this universe, indeed for the wrongdoers is a painful punishment. Shaytaan knows exactly. Remember where he comes from. He was the head jinn who was he voluntarily, out of choice, worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very, very elevated manner. So he knows a lot about how to worship. So he recognizes there's no one else but Allah to be worshipped. But because of his arrogant behavior, he was excommunicated from Jannah. So now he knows he's there, but he still knows what he knew then. And he's warning us, there's a painful punishment waiting for you now. You want to blame me? You've done wrong. You must now get ready for your punishment. Yeah, I just want to conclude on this note where we ask Allah, oh Allah, you have created us. You know all our individual weaknesses. Ya Allah, please support and guide us on how to resist and fight the accursed Shaytaan. Oh Allah, strengthen our efforts and grant us success. Allah, Allah, Allah. The way to invoke Allah's support, we mustn't do it parrot fashion. What are you saying? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Oh Allah, oh Allah, in everything we do, remember Shaitan is accompanying you wherever you are. Whatever you're doing, he's always there. So whatever you're going to do, from the moment you open your eyes, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Allah, protect me from the influence and the whispering and the temptation of Shaitan. But say it with meaning and with full presence of heart. Oh Allah, Ya Allah, protect us from the whisperings of Shaitan. You think it's your mind, it's not. 90% of the time, it's not your mind. It's either Shaitan or it's the Malaa'ikah that is speaking to you, and you say it's your mind, your mind. We don't even know what the mind is. We don't know how the mind works. The mind works on the stimuli that it gets from its 5 senses and the environment, and you say that's the mind. The mind, if you take it, it's the brain. You put the brain of a person there. Where is the thinking going on? So now they say the neurons communicate and back and forth, and it's a network of information coming to and fro. But where is the actual thinking taking place? Even scientists battle to understand that. So when you say it came into my mind, came into your mind from where? Watch out, from where? Is it coming from this side or is it coming from that side? And the other, of course, potent weapon, especially when we talk about jinn and you're scared of jinn, and we should all stay away from jinn. Can I make this comment? Don't get involved with jinn. The fact that some of them could be Muslim and some of them not, doesn't matter. Stay away from jinn. That is not something that we should delve into. Ask Allah to protect you from the influences of these beings. It's better to stick to what we got, the Quran and Sunnah, and stay away from jinn and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you. And the most powerful tool that we've been given, apart from A'udhu Billah, asking for Allah's protection, is Ayatul Kursi and the Quls. The Quls and Ayatul Kursi is a powerful shield, weapon of protection against the forces of Shaitan. But the more difficult one is to know when is he busy with you and to recognize it in your daily behavior. May Allah make us successful to fight against this very, very dangerous and clever enemy. I'm going to open up the floor quickly to hear if there are any comments or questions. Can I hear?
Brother Salie, just reflecting on what Brother Salie had mentioned now, in terms of the influences of Shaytaan and all of these things, what becomes abundantly clear also is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not left us without tools in terms of our defense. And as we understand that the tools of our defense is obviously in seeking Allah's protection against Shaytaan and in constant remembrance of Allah. As the statement that Brother Salie had put up there, that Shaitan puts his lips to his mouth to the heart of a human being, and if he remembers Allah, then he removes it. So certainly, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's constantly coursing through a human being's heart, and constantly keeping his lips moist with the dhikr of Allah, is probably the most potent way of protecting oneself against Shaitan. So for those people who find themselves to be weak, dhikrullah should be the course of action to strengthen themselves and to protect themselves from being misguided, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah, the filling your heart and your time and your actions with things that's pleasing to Allah is a powerful weapon to keep Shaitan at bay. But be on the lookout, because he will change his method of trying to win you over to suit your intelligence, your ability to reason. If you look out for that, he will change it so that it becomes more disguised, more subtle. So it's not going to be an easy task. Unfortunately, this task of fighting Shaitan, like the nafs, is right until our last breath. For every moment that we are alive, Shaitan and the nafs, in whatever form they are, they will be with you as your enemies to try and win you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until your last breath. So it is a struggle that we must fight, and inshallah, hopefully succeed against it. Any other final comments? Okay. Let's just say that I was going to do the dunya next, but I think because we've spoken so much about the Malaa'ikah, Malaa'ikah is what we will be doing next week, inshallah. Malaa'ikah, belief in the Malaa'ikah is a pillar of Iman. We go through 3 levels of belief, all of us. The first level of belief is the belief of Islam, the Sharia level. We know what the Sharia is, the arkans of Islam, the 5 arkans. Then we get the arkans of Iman. Now the arkans of Iman, one of them is to believe in the Malaa'ikah. What do we know about the Malaa'ikah? How can we say our Iman is complete? How can we say we have Iman? If people ask you that, do you have Iman? Yeah, of course, I've got Iman. You think if you say it, I've got Iman, that gives you Iman. Iman requires of you to know about the Malaa'ikah. And we know so little about the Malaa'ikah. That's why I felt, let us do the Malaa'ikah for our next session or 2, probably 2 sessions at least. and then we're going to do the dunya, because those are the three things that work together. The dunya, the world, with all its attachments, temptations, and the glitter and the gloss and the excitement attached to it, that plus the nafs and shaitan works together as the enemy forces to keep you away from Allah. But we'll deal with the dunya after we've dealt with the malaika. So we hope, inshallah, that you will join us so that we can deal with this very, very important pillar of understanding the malaika, how they operate, how they look, what they're made up of, and so on. And just to remind you, we'll send out the notice that our next session will be when Muhammad Fasih, when is the first of Ramadan, if they see the moon?
Let me just take a look with the Salie, because I can't remember. Although, just a little bit of inside information, I don't think the chances are good of us seeing the moon for the month of Ramadan. But let me just take a look. So the 30th will be on, let me see, where are we now? Actually,
we're already on the 5th.
But what is the Islamic date today? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, I think I can find it quickly. Yes, today is the 22nd. So tomorrow will be the 23rd. A week from tomorrow will be the 30th. So it will either be the Monday or the Tuesday, I think. Yeah.
So, yeah. No,
29th will be the 12th of April. The 30th will be the 13th, and the 1st will be the 14th. Because it's not that, I don't think it's likely that you'll see the moon.
So it's likely that it will be Tuesday.
It will be Tuesday, inshallah.
No, I'm trying to establish. I don't also want us to, because the day before Ramadan is perhaps not an appropriate session for us to have next Monday. Can I just hear quickly from the people who are present whether we should have it for Monday or whether we should just leave it for the first Sunday at 11 the morning, because that's the time we've decided. It will be Sundays at 11 in the morning in Ramadan. Should we just make that the next session, that is the time that we will do it? Let's just quickly hear from people.
Yes, but Salie, I support the first Sunday of Ramadan to be the next session.
Inshallah. Is there anyone who has a different view?
I second that, Salie. I think that Sunday at 11 is a good time. Inshallah, I mean.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Okay. So we will stick to the first Sunday, inshallah. In fact, you know, just as a matter of interest, because I had to be chairman of so many different organizations and things. Instead of saying who all agrees with that, you ask if you're ever placed in a position where you have to canvass opinions and you ask and somebody makes a suggestion, then you ask, is there anyone who has a different suggestion? Then the assumption is that everyone agrees with the first suggestion. That's just a throwaway piece of information. Inshallah, we'll start next Sunday at 11. And I hope to see you all there. And may you have a very, very uplifting, rewarding Ramadan. Try and focus on some of the stuff that we dealt with. Even if it's just one or two things, don't try and do everything. Take one or two things and say, I'm taking this into this Ramadan to give it a bit more meaning for me. for this year. Just 1 or 2 things. Inshallah, it will then make a big difference to your progress that you will make on this path. If you make progress, Allah takes you by the hand and actually pushes you further, that you make much more than what you deserve. We walk to Allah, Allah comes running, not literally. So inshallah, may Allah make it easy for all of us. May Allah, before I ask you to make a closing dua, Muhammad Fasih, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us for the effort that we are making. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our families and us, that we benefit from this month ahead. And we make a special dua for the mother of Muhammad Fasih, who passed away 2 weeks ago, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must raise a status in Jannah and place her amongst all the Salihin and the pious and the prophets, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must put sabr in the hearts of all the family and everyone else who's sick and suffering and going through difficulty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must give them ease and solutions to their problems, so that those things do not become a distraction to keep us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make dua, Muhammad Fasih. Tafaddal.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم. سبحان الله رب العرش العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. سألك مجيبة رحمتك وأزاء مغفرتك والغنيمة من كل بر والسلامة من كل إثم لا تدع لي ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا حاجة لك في رضا إلا قضيت يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اغفر لها وارحمها وأسكنها في الجنة. اللهم اغفر لها وارحمها وأسكنها في الجنة. اللهم اغفر لها وارحمها وأسكنها في الجنة وتجاوز عن سيئاتي واحشرهم مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. ذلك الفضل من الله وكفى بالله حسيبا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الفاتحة. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي آمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل أواكب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير والعافية إنك على كل شيء قدير. دعواك سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها السلام وآخر دعواهم
Shukran, Muhammad Fasih. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all safe. Amin. Ya Rab.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Salie.
Wa alaikum
Shukran
salam.
once again to you.
Wa alaikum salam, Muhammad. Alhamdulillah. Shukran to you too.